Avionics system in Gripen E is allowing us to update our software within hours. An example of what we can do. Say we record a new radar signature of an opponent, say a new stealth fighter.
Canada just upgraded its fighter fleet, but NATO is terrified. The new Saab AREXIS electronic warfare suite is so powerful, it's accidentally blinding the very allies it's meant to protect. Is Canada's pursuit of total electronic dominance worth crippling the radar signatures of every allied interceptor in the northern sky? What happens when your strongest weapon becomes your greatest liability? Canada's integration of the AREXIS suite into its Gripen fleet has created a digital nightmare for NATO. Its aggressive jamming frequencies are scrambling X-band radars, forcing pilots to choose between ultimate jamming power and the ability to talk to their teammates. NATO commanders are facing a crisis they never saw coming. A revolutionary new electronic warfare suite from Canada is effectively blinding Allied eyes during joint operations. We're diving into how this internal friction could collapse combat communication, leaving the Northern Fleet invisible to enemies but totally deaf to their own allies.
As of early 2026, Canada's newly delivered Saab JAS-39 Gripen E fleet is being integrated with the Saab AREXIS electronic warfare system, not as an add-on pod, not as a bolt-on capability, but as a fully embedded, software-driven core architecture. That distinction matters. Traditional electronic warfare platforms, think dedicated aircraft like the Boeing EA-18G Growler, were built to jam. Fighters were built to fight. The lines are now blurring. AREXIS is not just a defensive radar warning receiver, it's a distributed, digitally controlled electromagnetic management system. Instead of simply detecting incoming radar signals, it can analyze frequency behavior in real time, adapt waveforms, and respond with tailored countersignals. This is where the phrase digital stealth enters the conversation. Digital stealth doesn't mean invisibility in the classic low observable sense. It means manipulating the electromagnetic environment so that detection itself becomes unreliable. Rather than absorbing radar energy like traditional stealth designs, the aircraft can distort, deceive, or overload hostile sensors, potentially masking not only itself, but shaping the signature picture around nearby friendly assets.
In theory, that changes air combat geometry. If one aircraft can dynamically alter how radar returns are interpreted across a battle space, then the spectrum itself becomes maneuverable terrain. Detection becomes conditional, not absolute. And for alliance planners who rely on shared radar pictures, that introduces a layer of complexity. Now add gallium nitride, GaN-based transmitters into the equation. GaN technology dramatically increases power efficiency and heat tolerance. In practical terms, that means more jamming output per kilogram of hardware. Historically, that kind of power-to-weight ratio was associated with larger, dedicated electronic attack platforms. Embedding comparable output into a multi-role fighter shifts expectations. But here's the important nuance. Electronic warfare inside NATO is about coordination, not chaos. Systems like AREXIS would need careful integration to ensure they complement allied sensors rather than interfere with them. Alliance doctrine depends on a common operational picture. A platform that can dynamically reshape the electromagnetic environment must be tightly networked and transparently managed. So when analysts talk about NATO fears, what they're really referring to isn't panic, it's calibration. If Canada operates one of the most flexible, software-driven EW suites in the alliance, that creates both opportunity and friction. Opportunity because it strengthens collective deterrence. Friction because spectrum dominance requires trust, interoperability, and clear command authority. The ghost in the machine isn't invisibility, it's control.
Now the conversation shifts from capability to consequences. Inside NATO planning rooms, the concern isn't whether Canada's Gripen E with the AREXIS suite is powerful. The concern is what happens when that power operates inside a tightly networked alliance battlespace. Too effective for legacy assumptions. Modern NATO identification friend or foe, IFF, systems are encrypted, frequency agile, and designed to resist interference. They are not fragile. But electronic warfare doesn't operate in a vacuum. Fighters, airborne early warning aircraft, naval radars,
tactical data links, they all share overlapping electromagnetic space. A wide-spectrum, high-output EW suite built around gallium nitride transmitters has enormous flexibility. That flexibility is an advantage against adversaries, but within coalition operations, it introduces a management problem. If a platform aggressively shapes the spectrum to protect itself, how do you guarantee it doesn't unintentionally degrade friendly sensor clarity in the process? That's the dilemma. Not malfunction, but interaction. The blind spot problem. Electronic warfare systems like AREXIS analyze incoming radar emissions in real time and respond with tailored countermeasures. That response can include deception techniques, false target generation, or noise-based masking. In adversarial environments, that's survivability. In coalition environments, if emission control procedures and coordination aren't perfectly synchronized, you can create temporary distortion in the shared tactical picture. Not permanent blindness, not catastrophic failure, but degraded track confidence. When coalition aircraft rely on common operational data links for situational awareness, even small fluctuations in signal clarity can force pilots to cross-check sensors more cautiously. In high-speed air combat, seconds matter. That's where commanders become cautious.
Baltic Sea training reports. Handle carefully. There have been discussions in defense circles about advanced EW signatures during multinational exercises, creating unexpected sensor effects. However, there is no publicly verified reporting confirming that Canadian EW systems directly caused sensor washout for F-35 pilots in Baltic Sea drills. And that distinction matters. Military exercises frequently push systems to their limits, specifically to identify friction points. Temporary sensor anomalies, spectrum congestion, or track instability during testing are not unusual when cutting-edge systems operate together for the first time. If anything, those moments are part of the integration process, not proof of instability. The real issue: governance, not fear. When analysts say NATO fears this capability, it's not panic, it's governance. Electronic warfare dominance is a force multiplier, but only if it is predictable within coalition doctrine. NATO depends on a shared operational picture. That picture relies on disciplined spectrum management. If Canada fields one of the most flexible, software-defined EW suites in the alliance, NATO doesn't fear it, it recalibrates around it, and that recalibration forces hard questions. Who controls emission authority in multinational formations? How are jamming envelopes coordinated in real time? How do you preserve allied sensor integrity while degrading adversaries? The friendly fire dilemma isn't about friendly fire in the traditional sense, it's about informational fratricide, accidental distortion of shared awareness in an era where the electromagnetic spectrum is as contested as the sky itself. This is where the story stops being technical and becomes political. Electronic warfare is no longer just a battlefield tool. It's software, it's code, it's update authority. And in 2026, update authority equals strategic leverage. Canada's shift toward independent EW control. If Canada leans into a platform like the Gripen E with an open, software-driven EW architecture, it signals something subtle but significant: control over its own electromagnetic doctrine. Traditional US-centric defense ecosystems often rely on tightly managed software pipelines. Updates, encryption layers, integration permissions, all controlled within a highly centralized security framework. That structure offers stability and deep interoperability, but it also creates dependency. An independent EW stack, one not confined within externally managed software locked boxes, gives a country flexibility. It allows rapid domestic modifications, customized waveform libraries, and national control over how jamming profiles are configured. For a middle power like Canada, that's not rebellion, it's strategic insurance. Open architecture versus proprietary ecosystems. The contrast often drawn in defense discussions is between open architecture systems and proprietary integrated ecosystems. Gripen's philosophy has long emphasized modular software, allowing upgrades and integration layers to be modified more flexibly by operators. That design appeals to countries prioritizing autonomy and cost control. By contrast, aircraft like the F-35 operate within a deeply integrated proprietary mission system environment. That environment is extraordinarily capable, but tightly controlled. Modifications flow through centralized security and certification channels. Neither model is inherently superior. One prioritizes standardization and seamless ally integration. The other prioritizes adaptability and national customization. But when both operate side by side in multinational formations, friction can emerge, not because systems fail, but because governance models differ.
Five Eyes tensions. Reality check. There is no verified public evidence confirming that Canada refused to throttle back EW output during joint North American drills, nor any documented diplomatic rupture inside the Five Eyes community over this issue. However, conceptually, the tension is understandable. In highly networked air defense exercises, especially those involving NORAD frameworks, emission control, econ, discipline is critical. If one participant fields a highly dynamic EW suite capable of wide-spectrum output, integration protocols must be carefully negotiated. In alliance politics, perception matters almost as much as physics. If a partner's system is seen as unpredictable or overly autonomous, even temporarily, questions arise about command authority and data integrity. That doesn't mean breakdown, it means adjustment. The core question. At its heart, sovereignty versus standardization isn't about Canada defying allies. It's about this. Can a nation fully control its most advanced electronic warfare capabilities while still maintaining perfect interoperability within a tightly integrated alliance? That's the balancing act. Too much standardization and you sacrifice autonomy. Too much autonomy and you risk friction in shared systems. NATO and Five Eyes partnerships are built on trust, but modern defense technology is built on sovereignty. Reconciling those two realities is one of the defining defense debates of this decade. Now we move from friction to doctrine. Because if Canada fields one of the most flexible electronic warfare platforms inside NATO, the question isn't whether it causes tension. The question is whether it changes how the alliance fights. Let's strip the drama out of the word blind. No modern radar network is permanently blinded by one aircraft. That's Hollywood. Real-world electronic warfare is about temporary degradation, deception, and shaping detection probability, not magic invisibility. But even temporary degradation changes risk calculus. On NATO's eastern flank, where air policing missions operate under constant radar scrutiny, survivability margins matter. If a Gripen E equipped with a high-output GaN-powered EW suite can reduce detection reliability or complicate targeting solutions, it increases maneuver space for the entire formation. That shifts mission planning assumptions. Instead of assuming hostile sensors maintain uninterrupted tracking, planners begin factoring in contested electromagnetic environments as the norm. The front line is no longer just physical geography, it's spectral geography, and the side that shapes the spectrum shapes the fight. Now comes the uncomfortable debate. NATO's maritime air defense backbone includes vessels equipped with advanced systems like the Aegis combat system. These systems are designed for high-sensitivity tracking and missile defense integration. In theory, aggressive airborne electronic attack profiles must be carefully coordinated to ensure they don't degrade friendly sensor clarity. Not because systems are fragile, but because dense, overlapping emissions create complexity.
The real debate isn't whether Gripen would blind Allied cruisers. That's not how coalition doctrine works. The debate is whether maximum spectrum dominance against adversaries requires tighter emission governance inside multinational task groups. Is occasional coordination friction worth the advantage of overwhelming adversary air defenses? Most commanders would say yes, but only if integration protocols are airtight. Dominance without discipline is chaos. Dominance with discipline is the turris. Historically, Canada has played a reliable but supportive role inside NATO air operations, air policing, NORAD commitments, coalition deployments. If Canada transitions into operating one of the alliance's most agile electronic warfare fighters, that role subtly evolves. Instead of simply integrating into established architectures, Canada could become a testing ground for next-generation spectrum doctrine, a pathfinder. That changes internal power dynamics, not in a confrontational sense, but in influence. Inside alliances, the nation shaping innovation often shapes conversation.
If Canada refines advanced EW integration over Arctic airspace or multinational exercises, it doesn't just enhance its own defense posture, it influences how NATO defines electromagnetic dominance in the next decade. And that's the bigger story. This isn't about one aircraft potentially interfering with a radar. It's about who defines the future doctrine of air combat in a world where the spectrum is as contested as the sky. Now we're entering the part that unsettles planners. Not because of today's capabilities, but because of what's coming next. Electronic warfare is shifting from reactive to adaptive. By 2027, software-defined EW across Western platforms is expected to use AI-assisted signal analysis. Not autonomous decision-making, but systems that can rapidly classify new radar emissions, compare them to vast onboard libraries, and recommend optimized countermeasures in near real time. That's cognitive electronic warfare. It compresses the decision cycle and allows fleets like Canada's to learn and adjust faster during operations. But there's tension. The more adaptive these systems become, the more complex the electromagnetic environment gets, especially in coalition operations where coordination is critical. As spectrum tools advance, sensors must become more resilient, better at filtering deception, and stronger at maintaining track confidence in noisy conditions. This isn't an arms race between allies, it's a race between capability and complexity. Here's the paradox. Canada's push for sovereign advanced EW could significantly strengthen NATO deterrence, while simultaneously forcing the alliance to rethink integration, governance, and sensor protection. Not because it weakens NATO, but because it pushes it forward. In modern warfare, spectrum control isn't optional, it's central, and leadership in that domain comes with responsibility and technical complexity. Thanks for watching.